back, everybody, to We Are TPM. You are here this week again with John Teixeira and myself, Kyle Teixeira, to discuss all things property management, real estate. Just kidding. We are here to discuss or continue our topic of the 9 concerns. The 9 things. I can't even do it today. The 9 concerns you may have when thinking of renting your home.
There you go. That's it.
And this week, we're going over the concern of what if they mess up my house?
Yep. So just a reminder, if anybody's ever talked to you or mentioned, hey, maybe you should rent your home, these are the things that a lot of people that haven't considered it, these are the objections that run through their brain, right? Mm-hmm. So we've gone through, I need money. We've gone through, what am I going to do next, right? And so this one is another really common one that we hear a lot, huh? What if somebody trashes my house, right?
We should call this the 9 fear-based decisions when thinking of renting your home, right?
Yeah, well, some of them have some validity to them, right? And so let's kind of go through this. I got some points here and I don't want to talk through. So what if somebody trashes my house? And so we've talked about this several times before on how bad stories get regurgitated, especially in this day of age with social media, right?
Yep. What makes a good headline, right, is it's usually the best or the worst, right? So, and that's kind of what you're getting at is that these stories that get amplified and regurgitated or word of mouth, all that stuff are the horror stories. We call them horror stories because they're rare.
So when you got a story like Steve's where he's got a tenant in his house for the past 18 years that doesn't want to leave, right? And doesn't ask him to do repairs and everything goes nice and easy, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody tells that story. Now, maybe when it's that extreme, they might tell it to their buddies, hey, you should buy a rental property. But for the most part, that property doesn't get regurgitated and told over and over again and spread like wildfire. But somebody trashed my house and I had to replace every toilet and there was holes in every wall and yada, yada, yada. That story gets told over and over again and handed down to generations.
Well, and because that's, no matter what landlord you are, no matter what property you have, there's different outcomes and different types of people of how they'll treat your house. It's just a fact of life, right? And you could have the worst property that tenants treat the best, and, you could have the latter. So,
by the way, shout out to Steve, Podcast Mansfield. He helps us do this every single week. Since I just brought him into the show by throwing his scenario out there, I figured we ought to give him a little shout out. No?
Yeah, Podcast Mansfield. Check it out.
There you go. Check it out.
Thank you.
It's the only one you'll find that's better than ours. So.
Well, I don't know about that, but so all right. So the second thing is when we place and screen tenants, right? We do it so extremely thoroughly that when we don't have this happen, right? So like our tenants that we place when they leave, we don't show up to a trashed house. Now we often show up to trashed houses, but that is when somebody else placed the tenant, usually.
Generally, yes. And I don't like the blanket statements. I'm a little bit of a superstitious person about some things.
Because then we're going to make something happen.
Always of the time, yes, you are correct. So, and I'm going to put it at most always. So.
But in general, it's because of the diligence, and we're going to wrap it up with this, but the diligence that we do up front puts a better person that's more responsible in your home and gives you a lot less. And you mentioned at the top about fear-based decisions. Those decisions that people make that are fear-based often lead to this end result of a trashed house.
Mm-hmm. Well, and kind of getting onto the screening, I mean, you can never with 100% certainty screen and vet a tenant to know they won't trash a house, right? Because you can't. Intentions of people, no matter what their credit is, no matter what their history is, can change and different things can happen. But it's really the flip side of that coin of not making blind decisions. That's the common problem. And the tenants that we get that cause a lot of these problems, whether they're transfers or from a landlord or someone we didn't place, a lot of times it's that those things weren't even looked at.
Right.
That's the biggest problem.
Like rental
gut
verification.
feelings don't get good
rental
tenants.
verification. How many times have we saw an application that we really liked or that we were maybe prepared to accept, and then we got to that rental verification step, and we asked the common question that we asked the previous or current landlord: would you rent to this person again? And then you find out, no, I wouldn't rent to them again. They've trashed the house and they're late 4 times out of the last year. Well, that was a piece of due diligence that a lot of people, a lot of property managers even don't do, especially if they're looking at a good application that has good verifiable income, maybe good, decent credit. Everything else checks out. That's the piece that people typically look over and don't do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I've said it before, gut feelings are not due diligence. And, and, you have to look at those things. I mean, pretty much when we get transfers from a landlord or a lot of times even another property manager, I can say with pretty much 100% certainty, I've never gotten transferred a credit report, never gotten transferred a background check. At best, I get the application, right? So I don't even know what verification process you went through. And once we have a tenant, we have to respect the tenant rights and see that through the end of the lease and, try to uphold the situation best we can. But, and eventually when a new tenant gets placed, that tenant will be under our standards. Right? And that's when we start to see those problems go away, because they aren't only verified, they're held to a standard, which is important. They know from the get-go the expectations of us. They know we have all this information and all that stuff, security deposits. And when it's done right, it's more of a holding, it's a two-way street. I hold you to your agreement and you'll hold me to mine. So,
well, that is a kind of a good segue into our next point. And that is, I call it training tenants is what I call it. But really it's kind of like creating the behavior you want out of your tenants, right? By setting up an expectation of what you're going to do. So in our case, we have systems in place for repairs, for rent collection, for all the things that we do that tenants are privy to, right? And they become accustomed to seeing our emails, seeing our videos, our text messages, whatever it is. And so there's a whole process that we've got in place to train our tenants' behavior and what our expectation is for them.
Yeah, and it's important. I mean, it's not really transparency. It's more just knowing expectations, because lack of expectations or lack of knowledge can cause anger and a lot of emotions. And the goal is to make this an emotionless process and business, essentially. That'll never happen. But as close as you can get to that bullseye, the better you will do. So. Because
setting up expectations makes it easier on everybody, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's as simple as that. Understanding, well, this is what Teixeira is going to do, and Teixeira is going to expect this when we move out, or Teixeira is going to do this inspection. So we got to, so just a little bit more accountability involved in our systems, right? That gets you to the end line. So what's the flip side of that? Somebody's in a house for 18 years, like Steve's tenant, and he's never looked at it maybe, and has no idea what condition it is, and they don't call him, and he doesn't care as long as they sent the rent, and then they move out, and he goes and looks at the house to find out that, hopefully it was well kept, but he may go find out that it's been in complete disrepair. They haven't done anything in 18 years. It's worse than he can imagine, right? So that's the flip side, and that happens from no diligence whatsoever on anybody's part.
Yeah, and likely wrong expectations. Like a lot of times it's the tenant thinks, as long as I don't call in repairs and I pay my rent, landlord won't care that this leak is causing water damage to the house, because I never called him, they'll be happy. No, I mean, you had a responsibility to call them contractually and, otherwise.
Some tenants are programmed by previous landlords to think that landlords don't want to hear from them.
Yeah.
Right? We talk about setting up behaviors, right? The expectations and behaviors that we want. Well, sometimes you're reprogramming people from previous landlords doing just that, right? We don't want to hear from you. Don't call me. I've literally heard landlords tell me that they won't repair anything, until it's, over $500 or something like that, right? And so tenants are just programmed sometimes by their previous landlord to behave a certain way.
We do see that often because there's certain things that landlords can do that I'd say the industry and property managers can't do. They're held to slightly different standards,
Or shouldn't do.
Yeah, or shouldn't do. But that it's unclear expectations, or even setting up tenants to be bad tenants for the foreseeable future because of your processes that are so far from the standard or the norm.
Right.
That really sets it apart. And
Right.
that's why this market for tenants and market of tenants and landlords has so many different structures and leases, and it can vary very strongly. So we make our system standard across the board for that reason. You're never going to have our tenants communicating to another tenant saying that they did this for this way and not for me, and blah blah blah. So
Right.
that's important.
So here's another interesting one that seems really elementary to you and I, but we both know that sometimes it's not elementary, and that is a security deposit. So we collect a security deposit basically to protect you from this, right? Now, if it is going to cost you $12,000 to repair, it's kind of extreme, right? But if it's going to cost you that much money to repair the damage a tenant does, a security deposit isn't going to cover that whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. But most repairs are covered by a security deposit. Most tenant negligent type of repairs, when they move out, that we're going to charge them for, are within the amount of the security deposit that they've given us. If your average rent right now is probably $1,800 to $2,000, so we've got $2,000 on file. If you leave and there's $450 worth of repairs, we take that out of that security deposit. Do you find that to be true, Kyle?
Yeah. I mean, it's why they call it a security deposit. It's a level of security, and that varies across the industry. Some people want more security, some people want less, but that's the point of it. It's partially to mitigate that fear of somebody going to mess up my house. You'll never with 100% certainty know that won't happen, but that's why this is an investment. Yep. And all investments have risk. Yep. So I mean, a very simple answer is, if you want no risk, don't invest.
Well, or
in life.
Or what I like to say about our service is we create certainty for our clients. And that's really what our job is. There's a lot of uncertainty in what we do, but because we do it in a very systematic way and we have a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge in regards to what we're doing every day, we take that uncertainty out, and we give that investor a level of certainty. So, the security deposit, there's been times, Kyle, for the most part, we take 1 month's rent for a security deposit, right? So if we're renting something for $2,200 a month, we collect $2,200 and put it aside for that security deposit. Now, there's times when maybe there's one yellow flag in the application, but we decide to take it with the owner's consultation, right? And it's like, you know what? All of these things check out, but there's this one thing that just doesn't check our box. And if we're going to move forward, sometimes we decide to move forward with an additional security deposit. So because we like everything that we see on the application, we don't have anything better, right? And so we choose to take this application, but with a higher security deposit. Those are the kinds of decisions that you can make as a landlord.
Yeah, you can. And it just provides bigger security if there's a higher risk,
Risk reward.
Yeah. And I think one thing this concern usually doesn't bring up or get acknowledged is these tenants are living in the house And I'd say most people don't want to live in a damaged house, right? Or care about the house, how the house looks. I mean, it's the home they live in. So when you look at it from the other side, most people don't want to intentionally damage the house they live in. I'm not saying those people don't exist or that things don't happen, but it's from the other end of the coin of these people live in this home.
Right.
So it's probably not their intention to mess it all up.
Right.
So.
Right. And sometimes, to your point, they don't know any better. They don't know what they're doing. They don't realize that they're letting something go. And sometimes things are happening behind furniture and they don't even know it until they move out. You know, I get it. Another great point is in this topic about security deposit is, what do we do for pets, right? For additional security deposit for pets, pet screening. There's a lot that we do regarding that. That most people probably don't do.
It's very true. I mean, you just mentioned pet screening, and most people would be like, what are you talking about? So, yeah, we screen the actual pets because there's methods to do that, and it can give you risk factors, just like screening tenants can give you risk factors. And you take additional deposits for pets because, you know, they can cause damage to the home, but
that are usually, in our case, non-refundable. Right?
Yeah, definitely. In most cases, they're non-refundable, or there's non-refundable and a refundable part, or whatever it may be, or pet rent, or all that stuff. So, and that's because there's added wear and tear, that comes with pets.
There's added risk.
And there's added risks.
That there's going to be damage. Yep.
Yeah. And,
how many times have we walked into a house that's clean, looks great, tenant left it really nice, but as soon as you walk in, you can just smell, it just kind of, that pet smell just hits you because you clean the carpets all day long, and without the proper cleaning and deodorization, that smell just doesn't go away. And the people living there, they didn't know it. They didn't smell it. They lived with it. So they didn't understand, what they were doing to the property just by having the pets there, even if they were clean and responsible pet owners.
Yeah. And I mean, those things can happen, and it's all about knowing liability. A lot of that liability is on the tenant, and it's like anything else in life. If you're going to go get a pet, you better know the consequences of what that pet does, or all that stuff. So, we're not a school that teaches you all things of what to watch out for, but people learn from experience, and that's kind of how it goes.
So let's talk about something else, Kyle. So part of the story that people hear and regurgitate, right? There's a dollar amount attached to that story sometimes. I spent X amount fixing up my house after so-and-so left. I spent X amount this time, then that time. And so when you're regurgitating that story, sometimes that dollar amount goes with it, right? So I want to talk about that a little bit because there are about 100 different ways to repair a home, right? There's 1,000 different people that can do it, and it could range anywhere from, I don't know, $100 to $1,000 to do the same repair. And when we're talking about completely renovating something, now you're talking about a huge, like, whose opinion are you using? What decisions are you making? Do you have the ability to make those proper decisions for your next, to set your home up for your next tenancy? I say all that because we have a lot of experience doing that, right? And it's easy for us to make those decisions. But other people that don't have that same experience, they're struggling with each decision. Should I replace that faucet, or should I fix it with an O-ring, right?
Yeah, and you're talking about the judgment calls on each individual decision.
Right.
Did you say this high number for this tenant moving out because they chipped the bathtub? They put a chip in it, so you resurface the whole thing, right? Was that needed? That was probably smart to do, given the situation. But in a general sense, you blame that whole need on the one chip, or if there's a pee spot in the edge of the room and you need to replace the padding or wash the carpet, and you decide, let's go upgrade to vinyl so this never happens, and that costs you 4 times more than actually fixing that problem would have, and that's what really happens sometimes. Not that those get passed along. I'm saying that's at the end of the day, when that turnover's done, that they upgraded that unit to get themselves more rent.
Which isn't necessarily a bad decision.
No, it's usually a good decision
to attribute that to the somebody trashed my house scenario.
Yeah, it's like, the minimum you needed to spend to fix the problems they caused.
Right.
And then you spent let's say you spent 4 times that because you fixed those problems with upgrades.
Right.
It's 2 ways to look at it.
And you can hire the wrong guy, right? You can hire the wrong guy that costs you more money because you're fixing his repairs. You can hire the guy that's more expensive. Maybe it's not the wrong guy. Maybe it's the right guy, but maybe he's way more expensive than somebody that we would use, right? We use contractors that we know, that we trust, that we know are not going to do us and our clients wrong because they value our business. Mm-hmm. And they're also very fairly priced. So we have a really good idea on what things should cost us, even as they're going up in this environment, right? So other people don't have that idea. So when some guy walks in and sells them on, yeah, I could take care of this and renovate this for you, it'll look real nice, and he may have all the right crews doing all the right craftsmanship, but a $10,000 job could easily cost you $20,000 if you hire the wrong person.
Yes, and then you on top of that, give the wrong timeline or don't deadline or use the wrong person.
Because
for that
vacancy
reason.
is important, isn't it?
It is, and a lot of the horror stories like this that I hear, I commonly see people like, we talked about the upgrades inflating the number. Well, what will even compound way quicker on top of that number is rent. So I've heard landlords say, I lost, so-and-so number during this turn. Well, and then justify part of it where, it took me 3 months to fix everything they messed up.
Because I tried to do it myself.
Or you did it yourself, or you hired some person, and now you're adding 3 months of lost rent to that.
Exactly.
You didn't lose 3 months of rent because of that tenant, unless they, there's some rare situations maybe, like you have to rebuild the whole room. I don't know. But the point is, if that would have gotten done in a week or in 2 weeks, which any turnover we do shouldn't, take more than 2 weeks, especially, that's a big difference in lost rent because
we have a client right now I'm thinking about that likes to do save their money and do their repairs, right? Mm-hmm. Their own repairs. And he's been telling me for about 6 weeks about that we're going to manage this property, that he's getting it ready for us. We just flipped one in 3 days that needed a lot of repairs, and we got it ready. It's literally going to have, actually, it just got pushed back 2 days. So it's literally going to have 5 days of vacancy. This is a home that has had an old tenant that we didn't place in it, that lived in it for a long time. It ended up needing a lot of repair, right? We took it over with this tenant. We knew it was going to need a lot of repair. 5 days vacancy. And I've got this investor who thinks he's saving money because he's doing it himself. He's been working on this house that I don't think needed that much repair at all. He's been working on it for, I don't know, I want to say 4 to 6 weeks. He's been telling me, you're going to take this over. And I keep asking him every time I talk to him, hey, that place ready yet? No, still got another few days, few weeks, whatever it is. And
well, it's a math game, right? Because that happened to us earlier last year was we even got the quote for the renovation and we're going to do it. That probably would have taken a week. Turns out homeowner decided to do it themselves, took 4 months because of the price of the estimate. Well, I'm like, 4 months of rent would have more than paid for that renovation
4 months of rent,
estimate.
Taxes, insurance, utilities.
Well, and how much money did you throw out of your pocket at your mortgage during 4 months?
Right, that's what I'm saying.
They're both money out of your pocket. So
add the total cost of what it costs to own a home and keep it vacant. It's a lot more than people realize, and vacancy times are how you save money a lot of times on this, along with choosing the right contractor, right? Mm-hmm. They're both very important, but that's kind of where we come in. That's kind of where our expertise comes in because we're able to do that for our clients. And so if you're out there making those decisions for yourself right now, you just have to understand that both of those things are extremely important, and what that turnover is going to cost you is in vacancy time and the actual cost to repair.
Yeah, that's not even taken into account most people don't try to do it themselves, but you do it yourself. Now you're talking labor and your own time, or your own time to do that labor and materials and all that.
The value of my time is really high. If I'm out there throwing a hammer, man, I'm spending a lot of money. If I really put the value of what my time costs me, right? Have you ever done that, Kyle?
Yeah, and I mean, I've renovated my own house to be a rental, but I did it over a time period that I lived in it.
On your free time.
When I got my new house and needed to move, I hired contractors, so I had that thing rented out within 2 weeks, because that was a time consideration that needed to get done. So,
but that experience helped you make that decision. So the experience of doing it the first time helped you realize that, you know what, I should just hire somebody.
Well, yeah, that and what we talk about and doing this for years and all that. It wasn't really a decision or a thought in my head, but that's because because I know that the time was more valuable than whatever the cost was going to be for that time period, so.
I love it. Really good discussion, Kyle. I wanted to bottom line this because this is probably one of the more common, somebody's going to trash my house, right? How many times have we heard that? Kind of bottom line is that doesn't happen it happens to a very small percentage of people. And it especially doesn't happen the more due diligence you do up front, right? It's just like anything else.
It does. And I like to say until it exceeds your security deposit, say a lot of people think that somebody trashed their house. Well, if it's dirty and needs a deep cleaning, and it's a little gross or whatever when you walk in, those things are cleanable, and usually, small repairs and all that stuff, perspective usually is a lot different than cost, right?
Sometimes cleaning is trashing my house.
Some things that look awful are cheap,
right.
And some things that don't look so bad
That's a great point.
Are very expensive, right?
That's a great point.
So it's really not even if they mess up your house or there's repairs or turnover costs, it's until it's when it exceeds the security deposit. Right, because until it exceeds the security deposit, all those repairs are getting paid for and expensed out of that security deposit, right? It doesn't change your bottom line. So that's even more rare, is I guess what I'm saying.
It would be like if you walked in the front door and you're in the living room now and the ceiling fan is coming out of the ceiling, you would immediately have this perception that the house is trashed. Mm-hmm. If there's nothing else wrong with the house except for that, your perception is somebody trashed my house, and that ceiling fan literally is going to cost you $100 to replace.
Yeah. And part of this question that's even, the perspective is, what if somebody trashes my home? It's not your home anymore. So, and generally this is when it's coming from your
investment.
Home.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's your investment.
Exactly.
So, and I say it in that way, not to be careless, but that it can be fixed and continue to be your investment, right? Mm-hmm. Now, if someone came in with a bat into your house that you live in and trashed it and threw crap at the walls or whatever, you'd be a lot more upset.
So Kyle, people can expect there to be repairs to be done on an ongoing basis on their homes when they're renting them, right? And during turnover, right? Mm-hmm. It's inevitable. So we are not sitting here trying to say that that's not going to happen to you. The person we're talking to right now is the person that thinks that somebody is just going to completely trash their house with holes in the walls. Everything's going to need to be replaced, right? That's the mindset that we're talking to right now. There's absolutely going to be repairs. We were just doing an analysis for one of our clients before we came here for 2021 and what percentage of repairs to income that they're having to do. And that's a good analysis to do, and understanding what the industry thinks is fair for that and how you're doing compared to that is an important analysis to do. And that's a real thing. We're not discounting that. We're not saying that doesn't exist.
Yeah. I mean, it is a real thing. It's just, like everything we talk about, it's a investment decision. And we're talking about one of the concerns and fear-based decisions that'll stop you from making a good decision. And telling yourself that it's a bad one. When it's not, will somebody trash my house isn't the reason you should be not renting your home. I'm not saying there's not other ones, but that's not the one you should start and end with. Is probably the main point we're getting at.
This has been a fun series, Kyle. Just kind of talking through some of the things that we hear, like some of the objections we hear on a regular basis. I don't know which one we're going to cover next week. I know we got 5 more. Is that right?
Yeah, but if you're interested, you can tune back in and find out. So
there we go.
Well, if you guys have any questions or want to talk to us about any of these, get a rental analysis or just anything you may want to discuss, give us a call, 817-818-9039, or you can always shoot us a little passive email with your rental properties and we'll tell you what they're worth, or shoot us an email that, how you're in town, you want to go hang.
What is that email address?
What?
Oh, I'm sorry.
What is the email?
What is that
Show me the money at wearetpm.com. That is
show me the money
at wearetpm.com.
I just want to say the show me the money part.
Show me the money.
Show me the money at wearetpm. Yeah, so like Kyle said, you know what? If you're just curious what we could do for your portfolio, right? Just shoot us addresses and rents. It's just curiosity. Like, hey, what? So you could know what the cost of having somebody do this for you is, and whether it'll pay for itself or not, right?
Yeah, the rents part is to show, so we could show you if it'll pay for itself.
Right.
But if you're not comfortable doing that, just send us the properties. We'll give you honest estimates of what we'll get for you.
Yep. Love it. All right. Closing us out.
Yep. Everybody have a happy new year, and we'll catch you on the next one.
All right. Peace out.